My name is Shane Plante, and my role at the studio is senior animator and temporary director. We had all the creative freedom in the world, but we didn't know that initially when we started. The idea that we settled upon, I was unsure if you guys, Toon Boom, was going to say yes. But the plan was get enough artwork done so Jefferson would let us do it. Anyways, but as it turned out, everybody said yes, they loved the idea, and we were off to the races. Unreal. The start was a lot darker than I thought you'd agree with. And the stuff that I do on my own tends to be a little darker, like we talked about with The Gate last time you interviewed me. I kind of wanted to try and go even darker to really isolate our main character. And the fact that she gets grabbed, on the throat by the robot. I was like, we're going a little too far here, and just lines we don't get to cross at the studio regularly. I guess I was a little hesitant to pitch them. The style and tone. I never really thought about the style. It was just me on standby, pretty much. Like, I'm sure there's people that draw exactly like me or I'm drawing exactly like them, but I didn't really have time to think about it. I just knew these characters are gonna read really well on the backgrounds and the way I comp them, like on the top, in the tunnel, since they have so much black on them, I knew they were really gonna stick out. And for the tone, I'm more inspired by 70s cinema, and they're always backlit and they really play with the lenses, and I was trying to find avenues to do that within the short. But in the tunnel, we were just trying to go as actiony and light, like backlighting and just as frantic as possible. We always knew the direction. They're gonna start at the race, how are we gonna do that? How are we gonna make the Duke as imposing or nefarious, I guess, as possible? And we were gonna let the tunnel kind of decide who the real villain was. The problem was we didn't, or at least when me and Colin sat down to do the boards, I know he said he really wasn't a part of this thing, but that's a lie. When it got to boarding out the action stuff, I got lost. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Kind of, there's a moment of that, like, I thought this would be easier to board this stuff out. And this is where Colin really helped. Like, we came together and really figured out the action together, because that was hard. Oh, very hard. So we start with Mouse, who's our underdog, who is a peasant racing for her freedom, and she has to face an impossible opponent who's never been beaten. And newsflash, she beats her, and the underdog wins. It's kind of a Rocky story, if you will. And going to Nitro, I love drawing villains. I would say I only draw villains, ugly things, or stuff that's hiding in shadows. So Nitro came more naturally to me, I guess, since for whatever reason I've always gravitated toward villains. So he was like, I always knew what he was sort of gonna look like. And he's just a real jerk out to show Mouse that the tunnel's his stomping ground and, show her why he's the champion and why he never loses. But he falls for his own trap and he does lose. And the Duke. The Duke was kind of an extension of my annoyance. Pretty much me doing the voice was just me on overdrive. Like, I've never done voice acting before, so I was like, okay, I hope this works. And as I did the voice for the Duke, I really saw him come together in my mind. And then we start giving it off to the animators. I'm like, it's exactly how I wanted him to look. And he kind of took on a persona of himself, a persona bigger than just the character on the screen around the studio, at least. And I'd like to think that Nitro was a human before this, and he just lost his life in the tunnel, but they kept him around because he was such a right bastard. Okay. Because there's still a little bit of human left in the head. He does have a brain. That's the last piece of humanity that he has. So he still has some kind of faculties, right? It's a good Simpsons joke, by the way. But a lot of people were asking me around the studio, like, what the hell? Like, why is he screaming? And then, I spend so much time drawing the characters that the longer you spend drawing a character, or at least for me, I start thinking about what they are, why they're the way they are, and what's left on, any humanity left. The only thing we really changed along the way, aside from taking out, there was a little action beat in the center, there was 3 hits that Nitro got on Mouse. We shaved it down to 1 and 1. So Nitro hits Mouse and Mouse hits Nitro back. But the thing that changed along the way was the Duke. We knew roughly how he would say some lines, but me and Colin were having so much fun with him. We'd be like, oh God, what if he said this? Oh, it'd be so much worse if he said this kind of thing. You know, like he started coming together like as the storyboard started coming out. And we kind of got a sense that he is the voice of that wasteland. So he has to be like on an 11 scale, you know, like he has to be over the moon, like just super high energy, stuff like that. Kind of like Killian from Running Man. I took on a lot to do design-wise. Like in this project, like I turned into a BG painter, special poser. Like I didn't get to touch the rigs as much as I wanted to, but I got a chance to see the other side of the pipeline that I normally wouldn't. And it's a lot of work. And it really opened my eyes to like why we do certain things a certain way here and what to avoid the next time we do this. All of this project was done on Cintiqs, and I couldn't have done it without the new Cintiq Pro, which is awesome. Go buy 30. Let's check out some scenes in Storyboard Pro 22.
And now, our undefeated champion, Nitro! Last man standing wins. 3, 2, 1.
So what you saw there was the first scene where you're introduced to the Duke. So like we were talking about earlier, like I know enough on doing my own stuff where I like to approach audio just like I like to approach animation. I'll just make it as rough as possible. And then I start kind of crafting it up from there, which sounds work in where, and just kind of, it's like clay. You're just kind of building it up, getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work. But when it came to the voices, which is something I've never done before. So I didn't, since the schedule on this was pretty intense, I didn't have time to get stressed. I was just like, well, I told him I'd do it, so here we go. And then we jumped into little soundproof booth we have downstairs. And remarkably, like when I did start doing the voices and kind of adding the effects that I knew I were going to be put on eventually, throwing that just on my iPad, man, like GarageBand, it was awesome. And I was like, okay, this is really starting to come together now. And then that's when I kind of knew we had like the signature, at least, the sonic signature. On my own time, I would call myself a hobby musician. I'm not out to like play any concerts or anything, but I got some chops when it comes to electric guitars. And every once in a while, me and my brother and I will write a song or two. And the really challenging thing about that is he'll just make me write a riff out of nowhere. And it's the exact same thing that started here. I knew I needed to write something a little heavier with this, and then it came up with one riff. I always knew that it would be a little heavier, and I mess around with audio enough in my own time that when we approached Toon Boom with the idea, I was gonna ask, maybe I could take the music? And it was such a specific vision anyways. I asked her if I could take a shot. And then it started with this riff. And that's pretty much the heartbeat of the whole short. Like you've seen, I'm more the guitar guy. I do the guitar and the bass and most of the sound engineering, but I can't do drums. I'm not a drummer. My brother is. He's one of the best drummers I know. And sending this off to him kind of blind, he still hasn't seen any visuals from this. All he has is the voices to work with, and he made a killer drum track to really up the irons a little bit on this. Now, that was a look at the pre-production on the short, and I hope you enjoy Duke's game.